Bob Dylan is one of my favorite people because he's every bit as complex and intriguing and fascinating as a person as his music is complex and fascinating and intriguing. One of my favorite times with him is I went with him on his first and I think only concert tour of Israel. He played one show in Tel Aviv and the next night in Jerusalem. So at the first show in Tel Aviv, there were maybe 30, 40,000 people in this outdoor park. They've been, this is probably the most anticipated rock concert ever in Israel. He comes on stage and the people are lighting lights and they're doing all the kind of stuff, cheering. And he does 10 or 12 songs that most of them had never heard before. The stuff he'd been doing on his regular tour in America. He'd been touring with the Grateful Dead, I think, songs like Joey and Senor and stuff. And people, after about the third or fourth one, they start shaking their heads and stuff. And there's the spirit of the crowd just goes down like this. The next day in the paper, the reviews are brutal. Here's a man whose time has passed, boring, this and that. And so I have breakfast with him that morning, okay? And he kind of comes out, what did people think about the show? And I said, well, Bob, a lot of them weren't too, yes, they were thrilled to see, but they weren't too happy. Well, what was wrong with your choice of songs? And he says, well, what do you mean? And I said, he didn't say, what do you mean? He said, what do you mean? And I said, you didn't do the songs they wanted to hear. They've been waiting for decades to hear you say these songs that you're most famous for, these songs of revolution and idealism that means so much to a country like Israel particularly. And he says, well, look, the audience shouldn't pick your songs. I go to see Sinatra at the Greek Theater, and I don't care what he does. I just want to see him. I want to see what he feels that night. And I said, but Bob, again, this is the only time they've ever seen you. It might be the only time they'd see you, and they want to hear some of these songs. Well, tell me what they want to hear. So I took a piece of paper and wrote out, the times are changing, like a Rolling Stone, Ballad of a Thin Man, and I give it to him. He puts it in his shirt. So the next night in Jerusalem, I'm sitting there with a crowd, and he comes out, the times they are changing, the first song, and he goes down the list. It was the greatest thing. And then maybe 15 years later, I take my wife to meet him at the Forum, at Staples Center, I guess it was, backstage, and I introduce him, and he says to her, your husband makes out a pretty good set list. There's a lot of that Bob Dylan that's not understood. There's a warmth, there's a funniness, humor about him. He's really a fascinating, I think, just pretty much a genius of our time.